Marcus Rivera had worked at Forest Lawn Memorial Park for 17 years, and he thought he had seen everything. The prestigious cemetery in Glendale, California, housed the graves of countless celebrities, and Marcus had learned to treat every burial with the same quiet dignity. But nothing could have prepared him for what he would discover on that humid August night in 2019, exactly 10 years after Michael Jackson's death. The shift started like any other. Marcus clocked in at 11, exchanged brief nods with the day crew, and began his rounds through the sprawling grounds. The great mausoleum loomed ahead, its white marble walls glowing pale blue under security lights. This was where they had laid the king of pop to rest in the Holy Terrace section, inside a climate-controlled sanctuary that cost the Jackson family over $1 million to secure. Marcus had been part of the team that prepared the site back in 2009. He remembered the chaos, the security measures, the waves of grief that crashed against the cemetery gates. Fans had camped outside for weeks, holding vigils, singing songs, leaving flowers and teddy bears and handwritten notes. The world had mourned like they had lost a piece of their collective soul. But tonight, something felt different. Marcus couldn't shake the unease crawling up his spine as he approached the mausoleum. The air felt charged, electric, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. He checked his watch. 12:15. His footsteps echoed on the polished marble floors as he entered the building, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The Holy Terrace section was at the end of a long corridor, behind locked doors that required special clearance. Marcus had that clearance. As a senior maintenance worker, he was responsible for checking the environmental systems, ensuring the temperature and humidity remained constant. He had been inside Michael Jackson's final resting place dozens of times over the years, always professional, always respectful. He unlocked the first door, then the second, then the third. 3 layers of security to protect the sanctity of the space. The soft hum of climate control systems filled his ears as he stepped inside. The walls were adorned with religious artwork, golden fixtures, and fresh flowers that were replaced weekly. At the center, elevated on a marble platform, stood the bronze casket containing what the world believed were the mortal remains of Michael Joseph Jackson. Marcus moved to check the control panel, his routine so ingrained he could do it with his eyes closed. But then he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it. A mechanical whir, followed by a soft click. It came from behind the casket, from a section of wall that should have been solid marble. His heart rate quickened. In 17 years, he had never heard that sound. Marcus stepped closer, his flashlight trained on the wall. There, barely visible along the seam of the marble panels, was a thin line of light. Not reflected light. Light coming from behind the wall. His hands trembled as he reached out and pressed against the marble. The panel moved. It swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a narrow passageway that descended into darkness. Cold air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of recycled oxygen and something else. Electronics. Machinery. Life. Marcus stood frozen at the threshold, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. This wasn't supposed to be here. There were no maintenance tunnels, no hidden rooms listed in any of the cemetery blueprints he had studied. He pulled out his phone to call security, but there was no signal. The thick walls blocked everything. He had 2 choices: turn back and report what he found, or step through that doorway and discover the truth. Something deep in his gut told him that whatever lay beyond that threshold would change everything he thought he knew about the night Michael Jackson died. Marcus took a breath, steadied himself, and stepped into the passage. The marble panel swung shut behind him with a soft, final click. The stairs descended deeper than Marcus thought possible. 50 steps. 100. His legs burned with the effort, and the temperature dropped with each floor he passed. Emergency lighting strips along the walls provided just enough illumination to see where he was going, casting everything in an eerie red glow. This was no simple basement or storage area. This was a facility purpose-built to maintain with the kind of resources that suggested serious money and serious secrets. At the bottom, the narrow stairwell opened into a corridor lined with steel doors. Each door had a small window, dark and impenetrable. Marcus's breath came in short gasps, not from exertion but from the weight of what he was seeing. Someone had built an entire underground complex beneath one of the most famous graves in the world. The implications made his head spin. He moved forward, checking each window as he passed. Empty rooms filled with medical equipment, monitors, computers humming with patient activity. One room contained what looked like a small apartment, complete with a kitchenette and unmade bed. Someone had been living down here. Someone might still be living down here. The corridor curved to the left, and Marcus saw light spilling from an open doorway at the end. He heard music. Soft, melodic, unmistakable. It was Human Nature, one of Michael Jackson's most beautiful songs, playing from speakers somewhere in that lit room. Marcus's skin prickled with goosebumps. This couldn't be real. This had to be some elaborate hoax, some hidden recording studio or fan shrine built by someone with too much money and too much obsession. But as he approached the doorway, he heard something that stopped him cold. Someone was humming along to the music. A voice, clear and gentle, humming the melody line with a kind of familiarity that comes from having sung it 1,000 times before. Marcus pressed himself against the wall and peered around the corner. The room beyond was large, designed like a comfortable living space. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on music, dance, and philosophy. A small piano sat in the corner. Scattered papers covered a desk, and on those papers, Marcus could see handwritten lyrics, notes scrawled in the margins, musical notation sketched with practiced ease. And sitting in an armchair, facing away from the door, was a figure in casual clothes. Thin, wearing a simple white shirt and black pants. Long dark hair falling past the shoulders. The figure swayed gently to the music, lost in the melody, one hand conducting an invisible orchestra. Marcus felt like his heart might explode from his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get back up those stairs and never speak of this place again. But he couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. He could only watch as the figure stood, stretched, and turned toward a mirror on the wall. The face that looked back from that mirror was older than the world remembered, more weathered. Lines of age and stress creased the skin around the eyes. But those eyes, dark and impossibly expressive, were unmistakable. Marcus had seen them in 1,000 photographs, 100 videos, plastered across every newspaper in 2009 when the world had mourned. Michael Jackson was alive. Marcus must have made a sound, some small gasp or shuffle of feet, because the figure at the mirror went rigid. The music continued playing, Human Nature reaching its soaring chorus, but the atmosphere in the room transformed from peaceful to electric in an instant. Michael Jackson, or the man who looked exactly like him, turned slowly toward the doorway where Marcus stood frozen. Their eyes met. Time stretched and warped. Marcus watched as recognition flickered across the man's face, followed by resignation, then something that looked almost like relief. The man reached for a remote control on the nearby table and clicked a button. The music stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush Marcus where he stood. "You shouldn't be here," the man said. The voice was softer than Marcus remembered from videos, weathered by age and whatever this life had been for the past decade. But it carried that distinctive quality, that unique tone that billions of people would recognize instantly. Marcus finally found his voice. "You're dead. The world watched your funeral. I helped prepare your grave." The man's laugh was bitter, tinged with sadness. "You prepared a grave. You helped maintain a very expensive, very convincing memorial to a man who needed to disappear." He moved to the piano, his movement still carrying that fluid grace despite the years. "My name was Michael Jackson. Past tense. That person, that icon, that target painted on a human being's back, died on June 25th, 2009. What stands before you now is just a man trying to find peace." "This is insane." Marcus stepped into the room, his fear giving way to anger. "Do you have any idea what your death did to people? Millions of fans mourned you. Your family buried you. Your children grew up without a father." "My children know I'm alive." Michael's voice cracked with emotion. "That was the hardest part, the only part that almost made me abandon the whole plan. But they understood why it had to happen. They understood that their father was being destroyed, piece by piece, by a world that built him up just to tear him down." He sat at the piano, his fingers trailing across the keys without pressing them. "You want to know the truth, Marcus? I can see your name tag. You want to know why the king of pop faked his own death? It wasn't about the lawsuits, though those were crushing. It wasn't about the constant accusations, though those shattered my soul. It was simpler than that. I was dying anyway." Marcus felt his anger deflate. "What?" The cocktail of medications I was taking just to sleep, just to function, was killing me. Dr. Murray was a fool guy, but the truth was much darker. I was an addict, Marcus. I was in pain every single day from decades of dancing, from the injuries, from the surgeries to fix the injuries. I couldn't perform anymore. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't be the person everyone expected me to be. Michael's hands finally pressed down on the keys, playing a slow, mournful melody. So I made a choice. I could die slowly, publicly, turning into a cautionary tale for the tabloids to feast on. Or I could die quickly, dramatically, and give myself a chance to actually live. To wake up without cameras. To walk outside without bodyguards. To just be a person. The concerts, Marcus said. The This Is It tour. 50 shows in London. You signed contract worth hundreds of millions. I knew I'd never do those shows. Michael's fingers moved across the keys with muscle memory, creating music that existed nowhere else. The announcement was part of the exit strategy. Build up the anticipation. Show the world I was planning for the future, then die suddenly and tragically. Dr. Murray administered the propofol. I appeared to die. The paramedics who responded were part of the team. The hospital staff who pronounced me dead were compensated for their silence. The autopsy was performed on a body we had prepared months in advance. Marcus sank into a chair, his legs unable to support him anymore. The family at the funeral. The public memorial at the Staples Center. Millions of people crying in the streets. All real grief, Michael said quietly. Because I did die that day, Marcus. The person they mourned, the Michael Jackson who belonged to the world, ceased to exist. What you're looking at is the remains, the human being who was buried under all that fame. And for 10 years, I've been down here in this bunker, learning how to be him. Marcus sat in stunned silence as Michael continued to play the piano, the melody shifting from mournful to something more hopeful. The underground room felt surreal, like a dream he couldn't wake from. Everything he thought he knew about that summer 10 years ago had been a carefully constructed lie. How many people know? Marcus finally asked. How many people are part of this? Michael's fingers paused on the keys. Including you? 23. My 3 children. My mother knew until she passed. A handful of trusted friends who helped coordinate everything. The medical team, security personnel, and the Jackson family lawyer who structured everything to make sure my kids would be protected financially. He turned to face Marcus. Everyone involved signed agreements backed by consequences so severe that betrayal would mean losing everything they love. Money wasn't enough to buy silence. We needed mutually assured destruction. And you've been down here for 10 years? Never going outside? Never seeing the sun? Not exactly. Michael stood and walked to what looked like a blank wall. He pressed his palm against a hidden sensor, and the wall slid open, revealing another corridor. This complex connects to 3 other locations. A house in the desert, 2 hours from here. A cabin in Montana. And a small apartment in Manhattan. I rotate between them. I wear disguises. I've walked through Times Square. Marcus. I've sat in Central Park feeding pigeons. I've been to my own grave dozens of times, standing among the tourists taking photos. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. You've been hiding in plain sight. The best place to hide is where everyone's already looked. I grew a beard, gained weight, wore glasses and baseball caps. I'm just another middle-aged man in America. Nobody looks twice. Michael's smile was sad. You'd be amazed how invisible you become when you're not trying to be seen. When you're not performing, not dancing, not wearing a single sparkly glove. You're just another person. Marcus stood, pacing the room, his mind racing. And what happens now? Now that I've found you? Are you going to make me sign one of those agreements? Threaten my family? No. Michael's answer came quickly. That's not who I am, Marcus. I never wanted to build this unfair. The people who know chose to keep my secret because they love me, because they understand why I needed this. He met Marcus's eyes. I'm asking you to make a choice. You can walk back up those stairs, seal that entrance, and never speak of this to anyone. You can let Michael Jackson stay dead, let his children continue living their lives without the chaos that would come from the truth. Oh, Marcus prompted. Or you can tell the world. Call the press. Sell your story. Prove that you found me. You'd be rich. Famous. The man who solved the biggest mystery in entertainment history. Michael's voice remained calm, but Marcus could hear the tremor underneath. But you'd also destroyed dozens of lives. My children would face investigations. Everyone who helped me would face criminal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and who knows what else. The entire Jackson legacy would collapse into scandal. And me? I'd have to disappear for real this time, assuming I wasn't arrested. Marcus felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. He thought about his own life, his own struggles. 17 years of working night shifts, barely scraping by, watching rich people get richer while he cleaned their monuments. The money from selling this story could change everything for him. But he also thought about what Michael had said about being crushed by fame, about dying slowly under the weight of expectations. Marcus understood that feeling, in his own way. The world expected him to be invisible, to do his job and never question, never challenge, never want more. Why me? Marcus asked. Why tonight? In 10 years, nobody else found this place. Why did you let me in? Michael walked to the desk and picked up a photograph. He handed it to Marcus. The image showed a young man in a graveyard worker's uniform, smiling at the camera. Marcus recognized himself from 7 years ago. You've been coming down here for years, Michael said softly. Every time you check the environmental systems, you trigger a sensor that alerts me. I watch you on the security cameras. I've seen you, Marcus. I've seen you talk to the grave when you think nobody's listening. I've heard you play my music on your phone during your breaks. I've watched you handle every visitor with kindness, even the ones who cause problems. Marcus felt exposed, vulnerable. He thought those moments were private. You're a good man, Michael continued. And I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of living in fear. Maybe you finding this place tonight wasn't an accident. Maybe it was fate giving me a sign that it's time to make a different choice. The sun was rising when Marcus finally emerged from the underground complex. The marble panel had sealed shut behind him, and without knowing the exact trigger mechanism, he doubted anyone else would find it. He stood in the Holy Terrace section of the mausoleum, his mind still reeling from the past 6 hours. Michael Jackson had talked to him until dawn, sharing stories about his life underground, his regrets, his hopes, and his fears. Marcus had made his choice. But it wasn't the simple binary Michael had presented. It was something else entirely, something that would require courage he wasn't sure he possessed. He drove home as the city woke up around him. He showered, changed clothes, and sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and his laptop. His hand shook as he opened a new document and began to write. Not a story for the tabloids, not a confession, but a letter. 3 days later, Paris Jackson received a plain envelope with no return address. Inside, she found a handwritten note from a graveyard worker she'd never met, along with a USB drive. The note was brief. Your father asked me to make a choice. I'm choosing to give you the power to make yours. This drive contains a video message he recorded. What you do with it is up to you. Nobody else knows about this except your siblings. The secret is safe with me. Paris sat in her apartment, her hands trembling as she plugged the drive into her computer. The video began, and there was her father, older but unmistakably alive, sitting in that underground room. My children, Michael's recorded voice began. If you're watching this, it means someone found me. It means the universe has decided it's time for a conversation we should have had years ago. I've been gone for 10 years, and I know what that's done to you. I know the therapy, the questions, the anger at a world that took me from you. But the truth is harder than that. I chose to leave. I chose to die rather than let you watch me destroy myself. The video continued for an hour. Michael explained everything. The plan, the reasons, the years of pain that had led to the decision. He talked about watching his children grow up through secret video calls, about the agony of missing birthdays and graduations, about the price he'd paid for peace. And then he made a request. I'm not asking to come back, he said, tears streaming down his face. The world doesn't need Michael Jackson anymore. They have the music. They have the memories. But I'm asking if maybe, someday, you might want to know your father. Not the icon, just the man. I have a life now. It's small and quiet and nothing like what I had before. But it's real, and there's room in it for you if you want. The video ended with coordinates to the Montana cabin and a simple statement. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm sorry for everything. Paris sat in silence for a long time. Then she called her brothers. They talked through the night, processing emotions they'd buried for a decade. They argued. They cried. They laughed at the absurdity of it all. And eventually, they made their decision. The world never learned the truth. No press conference. No revelation. The secret of Michael Jackson's survival remained protected by the same people who had mourned him. But 6 months after Marcus's discovery, a private plane landed in Montana, and 3 young adults stepped onto the tarmac. Michael Jackson was waiting, older and grayer than they remembered, wearing simple clothes and a nervous smile. He didn't look like the king of pop. He looked like a father who had made terrible choices and was praying for forgiveness. Paris approached first. She stood in front of him, studying his face, seeing herself in his features. Then she said the words that broke him. Hi, Dad. We have a lot to talk about. As for Marcus, he returned to his night shifts at Forest Lawn. He checked the environmental systems. He tended the graves. He kept the secret. But he did ask for one thing in return. Every few months, an envelope appeared in his mailbox with no return address. Inside was always the same thing, a handwritten thank you note and tickets to Broadway shows, concerts, museums. Michael Jackson, the man who had owned the world and given it all away, was teaching Marcus Rivera the art of truly living. The greatest illusion Michael Jackson ever performed wasn't moonwalking or defying gravity. It was making the world believe in a death while learning how to truly be alive. And in the end, the secret wasn't revealed to shake the internet. It was revealed to heal a family that fame had fractured. Some truths, Marcus learned, are too precious to share with the world. Some secrets are worth keeping. And sometimes, the real story isn't about what the world lost, but what one man found when he finally let go of everything that made him famous. Peace, privacy, and the second chance to be simply human.